Hi everyone. Today we're going to be creating the joystick mount for our thrusting control board. The reason we're making this is the electrical connections for the joystick are underneath the joystick's circuit board. So we need to be able to bring it up off the deck so we're not damaging those connections. And basically it's an upside down table. So there's like a tabletop on the bottom and then 4 legs coming up to match up with the joystick. All right, it'll be a pretty easy build. Let's get to it. So in this first one, I'm going to go ahead and, first of all, I'm going to save my file. So I'm going to click on Save at the top. And I'm going to call this the joystick mount, except there's no U in joystick. I'm going to go ahead and call mine video version. That way I know which one I made the video with. Except I'm struggling. And I'm going to do my ROV location. If you don't have an ROV location, go ahead and click this down button. You can create a new project and call it ROV or even a ROV for advanced ROV because you guys are making the advanced one, nice and fancy. I'm going to hit save here and now I'm ready to rock and roll. Before I get started on my modeling, I'm going to close out this left-hand panel so that I have some more room to work with. I'm going to click on the create sketch button. I'm going to create my first sketch down here on the bottom. And I'm going to make that rectangle tabletop that's on the bottom by the plywood. I'm going to grab a rectangle tool. I'm going to use a center point rectangle for this. So over here on the right, I'm going to click on center point rectangle. Click in the middle of my sketch where I see that little blue square. Drag it out. And the width of the joystick circuit board is 38 millimeters by 38. So I'm going to type in 38. Tab will take you to the other dimension on the rectangle. And 38 again and hit enter. I'm going to go ahead and extrude this right away. Click on my surface and I'm going to extrude it up 3 millimeters and good. Now I need to create the legs coming up. So I'm going to click create new sketch. I'm going to create that sketch on this surface. Zoom in some so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to grab a circle. I'm just going to drag a circle in the side somewhere and it's going to be 10 millimeters. Now I want this circle to come up here and touch this side and touch this side, just barely touch them. Now I can try and move it and line it up, but what I'm going to find is it's really hard to do it that way. There's a really easy way to make a circle barely touch something. It's called the tangent tool. So I just clicked off of the thing so I'm no longer selected the circle. Click on the tangent tool up here. If you don't see it up here, click constraints and go down to tangent. Now tangent means that you're going to make something touch a circle or circle touch something else. In this case, I want to click on my circle and then this top line of the square, and now they're barely touching. I know that because I can see this tangent tool symbol here. On this side, I'm going to actually click on the rectangle first, or the side of the square first, and then the circle afterwards. So it works both ways no matter which one you click on first. Piece of cake? Now I just need to do that 3 more times, 1 for each square. Now I could do it 3 more times, or I could notice that because I centered my square, and because it's a square not a rectangle, this actually forms a perfect circle where all of these circles are. So I can do this cool thing next. I'm going to hit escape to leave the tangent tool. I'm going to go to create, and come down here to circular pattern. I'm going to click, it's going to ask me which objects do you want to pattern. Well, I'm going to want to pattern this outside of the circle. If you click on the center of the circle, it's going to pattern just the dot in the middle, not the circle on the outside, which is kind of weird. The center point is the center of my pattern. So here I'm going to create around this, and notice how it's creating a circular pattern around this midpoint. I'm going to increase it to 4, and it just so happens that that works out perfectly because my rectangle is a square and not a rectangle. And now here, so I'm going to say, okay. It's kind of cool to see a square as really also a circle. And one of the nice things about doing this with a circular patterning tool, if I come over here and say, you know what, this looks too big to me, I want to use 9 instead, I can double click on the 10, type in 9, hit enter, and all 4 of them change together instead of having to change them one at a time. So that's kind of cool. I'm going to change that 9 back to a 10, so double click on the 9, change it to 10, and we're good to go. Now I'm going to extrude these legs. E for extrude. I'm going to click on the circle and that little slice on the outside. I'm going to tip it over so I can see what's going on. Yep, I'm going to drag the arrow up and type in 25. Enter, and now I have my chair shape. All right, next thing I need to do is create the holes that go in here for the screws to go into. We don't want to try and just screw a screw into the 3D plastic. It tends to break and separate the layers. So we want to create a hole to start with. So I'm going to create a new sketch. I'm going to do it on one of the legs. Doesn't matter which one. And I want to put a new hole in here with a circle. The problem is the holes for the joystick aren't lining up with these center points. They're like over here somewhere. To position them, what I did is I measured how far apart the centers of two of the holes were, and that number is 30.7. So what I'm going to do is grab a rectangle tool. I'm going to change my line type to construction and a center point rectangle just like before. Click in the middle here and then drag it out. And each side should be 30.7. And I'm going to hit tab and then 30.7 again, and I'm going to hit enter. The corners of these squares are where my holes should be centered. So that was kind of a cool trick to get there. And notice how it's a little bit off from where the center of this circle is. So let's go ahead and do it. Now I'm going to go ahead and create, and the reason I used construction lines here is that construction lines won't get in the way of the circle extruding. So I'm going to come over here and grab a circle tool. I'm going to click right here, and the first thing I notice is, oh, I still have construction lines. So without unclicking, I'm just going to drag all the way over here, unclick the construction line button, and then drag it back over, and I want this hole to be 2.1. Enter. And now I can recognize, I can do that circle over and over again on all four, or I can remember, oh yeah, this is like a circle still. So I'm going to come here and do create circular pattern, click on the outside of the circle, click on the center point, and then say I want 4 of them, and click OK. Now I'm ready to extrude. I'm hit E for extrude. I'm going to click on all 4 of those circles. And then I'm going to tip it so I can see what's going on. Grab the square, drag it in to cut. I went down to 22. You don't need to go down that far, but why not? And voila, I've got my holes. Last thing I need to do, well, 2 more things I need to do. One is I need to round over all these sharp edges on the outside because the circuit board for the joystick is rounded over as well, so make it look nice. And I need to cut a couple holes in this base so that I can put screws through into the plywood. All right, I'm going to do the holes first. So I'm going to click Create a Sketch, click on the bottom face down here. I'm going to add 2 circles along this midline here, one here, and I think these need to be 3 millimeters. So on these holes, I actually want to make them a little bit bigger than the threads of the screws, so the screw just passes through and hits the plywood instead. I'm going to grab another one and put it over here somewhere. It doesn't really matter where. Awesome. Now actually I want these 2 circles centered on this line and equal distance away from each other. So to do that, I'm going to grab a construction line and connect the 2 circles together. One here and one here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see what we're doing. I still have the line tool active, so I'm going to hit escape to leave the line tool. And now I'm going to do this cool thing. I'm going to go here, go to the create menu, come down here to point, and I'm going to get on this orange line. It's hard to see the orange line. I'm going to keep just dragging over from it until I see a triangle. The triangle tells me I'm at the, oh, there it was, right there. This means I'm at the midpoint of that construction line, though that's the middle of the construction line. Now I'm going to use the coincidence tool. It's this one up here. If you can't find it, it's constraints, coincidence. Coincidence means the next 2 things you click on are going to be lined up with each other in some way. Exactly how they line up depends on what 2 things you click on. In this case, I'm going to click on the center of the construction line right here, this point, and I'm going to click on the center of the sketch. Boom. And now those 2 things, or those 2 circles are centered on my sketch, which is nice. Last thing I want to do is change how far apart they are. So I'm going to hit escape to leave the coincidence tool. Hit D for dimensioning. Dimensions allow you to add measurements to your stuff. So I'm going to click on this construction line here that I created, drag up a little bit and click and release again. And 25 sounds good. So I'm going to go 25 even here. And there it is. Last thing I need to do is I need to extrude this. I'm going to E for extrude, click on this circle. I'm going to tip it so I can see what I'm doing. Punch a hole down through it. Now, if I wanted to, I could just hit enter here and be done, but I don't like cutting too far in my models. So I'm going to come here and choose all the way through, which means it cuts all the way through, then stops perfectly at the edge. I'm going to click OK. All right, awesome. One last thing we need to do is just round over all these sort of sharp, pointy edges that are here. To do that, we're going to use the fillet tool. So I'm going to come up here to fillet. If you don't see it, modify fillet. And I'm going to click on all of these outside edges. Make sure you're only grabbing the edges. I'm going to flip this over, only grab the edges. And we're going to put a 4mm round over. That'll match the joystick really well. And hit enter. Wow, at this point, we've nailed it. We have our part done. Last thing I'm going to do is just hit A for appearance. If I like to put some color to it, I'm going to grab this powder coat rough yellow. I need to download it real quick, and now I can just grab the color, drag it, and drop it right there. Oh, that looks pretty cool, actually. And that's good. Now I need to print this. I need to 3D print this. I'm going to close. I'm going to come over to the bodies folder, open it up. It says body 1 right now, but I want to give it a more descriptive name. So I'm going to double click on body 1 and call this the joystick mount. Hit enter. And then I'm going to right click on the joystick mount and choose save as mesh. You can use any of these formats you want. They all work perfectly well. I'm going to leave it on the STL binary that it started with. You can click on preview mesh. And what a mesh is, it's a file that has all these the shape of all these triangles in it that define the outside edge of an object. It's what the Prusa slicer uses to create the slices with. Then I'm going to click OK. It's going to ask me where do I want to save it. Make sure save to my computer is clicked. We don't need this file, so we can just save it to the downloads folder on your computer. And I'm going to call this joystick mount save. This already exists, so I'm going to say yes, I want to replace it. Yours won't do that. Yes. And now I just need to open up Prusa Slicer, bring in that mesh file, slice it up, print it off. If you need help with any of that, let me know. I'm here to help. Great job today.